there, savvy home buyers and sellers. This is Jeff O'Leary, the Village Guru, and welcome to the May 2021 Greater Toronto Real Estate Market Update. This update is jam-packed with tons of information. You're not going to want to miss it, so let's go. Spring is in the air. Ontario's still in lockdown, but real estate keeps chugging along just as it always should. When we look at Toronto real estate for the month of April 2021 versus the same time last year, we can see that sales are up, get this, a whopping 360% from the same time last year. Now, if you look at that stat, you're like, wow, that's amazing. But if you remember, April 2020 was when the pandemic hit full blown and literally sales dropped off a cliff. So obviously the numbers are gonna look really good for this month and the next few months compared to the same time last year. So as we go through the spring, you are gonna see a very big variance compared to sales this year versus last year, and that's totally normal and it should even out by the summertime. Now, when we look at prices for all property types were up 33% compared to the same time last year. Again, we're gonna start to look into what's actually going on in the market in more detail. However, just keep in mind that home prices do not go up 30% a year, year over year over year over year. And if the market does tend to slow down a bit, it's no big surprise. It's nothing to worry about. Markets do correct themselves over time. But either way, we're gonna get into that later in the video. But first, let's go over breaking news. For our first story making headlines, the Toronto Real Estate Board did report that the number of sales were down significantly compared to March of 2021, and that prices were down slightly, I think it was 3%, from the same time last month. Now, that's for all property types combined. However, when you go to the news, they had a field day with this. In fact, here's an article talking about Toronto home prices post the sharpest drop since the start of the pandemic. And if you look just under the title, your eyes go to decline 20% in April. However, if you actually read that line, it says the number of property changing hands declined 20% in April. And only when you get further on in the article that they said the average price for a home fell 3.6% according to the data released on Wednesday. Guys, this is the problem that I see with the mainstream media. Honestly, if anybody can see that all they're looking for is clickbait at this point, like seriously, markets go up and down. When you look at the average price, a detached house can be a little shack, 800,000, or it can be a $25 million house, and they're all averaged together. Just by looking at average price, you can't really tell what's going on in the real estate market because all you need is a couple of those gigantic homes to sell, and that's gonna float the market up. Whereas if the luxury homes, say, aren't selling as much, then it will put downward pressure even though your first-time home buyer or your move-up buyer is still in bidding wars. They're still having a hard time finding that home. So I really don't like average price when it's averaged out over a region. You really do need to dive into the numbers, but we'll get to that later in the video. So in our next piece of news, the government did respond to all the press that we were getting over the last couple of months about the housing bubble and how overheated the market was, and they announced new changes to the mortgage stress test effective June 1st. Now, basically what it means is right now when you qualify for a mortgage, you have to qualify at 4.79% as opposed to the actual mortgage rate that you can get, which might be like 1.3, 1.5%. So it's a huge difference in what you can actually borrow versus what they want you to qualify for. So the government, in order to cool the housing market down, they've announced that instead of 4.79, that rate is going to be raised to 5.25%. Now, in plain English, that means they've calculated that people's purchasing power may go down 3 to 4%. But if we calculate that home prices are up 33% year over year, it's really not going to do that much to change the market. I personally think that right now, with our economy, I don't think there's really the stomach to do a full-blown hit the brakes on the real estate market because it does pump a lot of the economy. And a lot of small businesses are not doing anything. We're not encouraging our economy to grow. So this is where it's at, people. Construction, home services, all of it relies on the real estate market. So I think the government did something token to calm the media down, and it worked. If you go through the news articles over the last 2 weeks, The doom and gloom predictions, they've kind of faded into the background, and we've moved on to another story. Here we have another article, bidding wars calm down as sellers come back to Canada's housing market. And here's another one, GTA home sales up 362% since last April, but the market is starting to slow. So as you can see, I think we're just in a normal lull based on what has happened. However, there are some news media outlets that try and make this into a bigger story than it is. Out there on the street, I'm still seeing bidding wars. They might not be quite as crazy as before, and I'm still seeing good properties selling really fast. Now, this could be a good sign if you're a buyer, because some buyers that live and die off what's reported in the news may decide to back off. And in that case, it might create a little bit more inventory, which ultimately is the only way that house prices can go down in the long run. So you need to have more homes for sale than available buyers. If you have more buyers than available homes, then the market will dictate that prices will go up. It's the fundamental of supply and demand. No matter what the news says, no matter what the government does, they can tweak with things until you address those issues, which we're still not looking at, things like housing shortage, construction starts, things like that, then we are still gonna have tight market demand. And when that changes, trust me, I'll be the first person to talk about it in my video. Okay, so now we're gonna dive into the numbers for the GTA over the past month. So when we look at home prices, the detached segment is still the strongest performing segment out of all of them. In fact, when you look at the average sold price of a detached house in the Toronto area, it was up 36% compared to the same time last year. Now that even gets crazier in the suburbs, the 905, where the average detached home price was up 44% from the same time last year. Again, those are numbers that are reflecting that last April was a really bad month, and they're kind of a little out of whack, when in reality, it might not be quite that bad. However, the truth is that home prices did go up a lot over the last year, and if I was a betting person, I wouldn't expect them to go up another 30% in the next year. Now, when we look at semi-detached and townhouse, again, home prices were up a lot more in the 905 compared to the city of Toronto. However, when it comes to condo apartments, I did notice that Toronto condo prices, if you compare to the same time last year, are now up 18% as opposed to a couple of months ago when they were actually down. However, we'll get into the actual sold prices, which will explain more what's going on. What I see in the condo market is still, it's not quite as crazy as the detached segment. However, condo prices have rebounded, even in the downtown core, as their demand is starting to pick up for smaller high-rise units. Okay, so now I want to do a deep dive into the numbers, because the Toronto Real Estate Board did report that prices were down 3% from the month before, and we know some news sites have had a field day on it, predicting the end of the real estate market, the bubbles crashing. However, let's actually dive into the numbers instead of just looking at average sale price, because again, average sale price is really hard to determine because it depends on the type of properties that are sold. Now, when we look at the actual numbers, I like to look at the index and benchmark price for the Toronto Real Estate Board, because it averages out those anomalies and gives you a better idea of what we're looking at. So if I go to my city, which is Mississauga, and I look at the composite index for April, you can see that the average price for all properties was $982,400. Now, if we go back to March, it was actually $965,800. So the prices didn't go down compared to the last month, which is kind of funny. If I go over to a detached house, same thing. Average price is $1.337 million, and in March it was $1.318 million. And all the way through all the home prices. In fact, I don't know where that number came from, because if I look at the city of Mississauga, prices were up in April of 2021 versus March of 2021. So I'm not quite sure where that's coming from. But let's look at an area in Toronto. Let's look at CO1, which is downtown Toronto to the west, and let's see what they have to say. All right, so here we go. When we look at the composite price of a home in CO1 in Toronto for all homes overall was $845,200 in April of 2021. When I look at March of 2021, it's $814,000. So again, the prices actually went up month over month. Now, even if we go to a detached house, it was 1.359 in April and it was 1.310 in March. Again, detached prices went up month over month. Even the worst market, the condo market in Toronto, the average condo price in CO1 was $709,300. And in March, it was $684,100. So I'm here shaking my head wondering how prices have gone down, even though when I look at the statistics that were averaged out, it shows that they've gone up slightly. So listen guys, do your own research. The numbers are out there. However, sometimes people take a narrative in order to make a story that might not actually be correct on the street. All right, so now I'm gonna give you my prediction of what might happen over the next 2 to 3 months. So first off, I do personally believe from what I see on the street, tight market conditions will continue in the GTA. However, I do see a bit of cooling compared to what it was like in December, January, February, and March. And I think that's just normal. I think a lot of the buyers that were in the market have bought. And as more sellers start to list their home expecting the price increases that they've seen over the last year, it will create more supply in the market, which might make it a little easier for home buyers. But again, the fundamentals still apply. There's still not a lot of listings compared to the amount of buyers, so good homes are still gonna sell for top dollar. However, there could be a little more opportunity if you're a home buyer in this market. If you're a seller, make sure to present your home properly, stage it, price it properly, and you're still gonna do an amazing job and get an amazing price. Now, when it comes to government intervention, I personally don't see them doing a lot over the next couple of months. Now, I could be wrong, but so is the news all the time. However, I do see that this mortgage stress test is gonna come into effect. It will help a little bit to cool it down, and I guess we'll just have to play a wait and see it game if there's any other changes coming down the pipeline. Well, there you have it. I'm Jeff O'Leary, the Village Guru. I hope you enjoyed this May 2021 Greater Toronto Real Estate Market Update. Listen, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like it, and share it with your friends. If you have any questions about real estate, always feel free to call or email me. Have yourself a safe day.